in case there's any errors. But my name is Aileen Hamilton and I am the National Partnerships Manager at CERC, and I am delighted to welcome you to our provider information session today for Nuffield Research Placements. And I have on the call with me Laura Gordon, who is our Nuffield Coordinator, and she will be telling you a lot more about Nuffield today. And then we have Graham Ruff, who's Head of Programmes at CERC. And I'm also delighted to invite Esther Fatoba from STEM Learning, who will perhaps be able to answer any questions in case there's some that we aren't able to answer. She's our coordinator from STEM Learning. Hi Esther, welcome today. So what we're going to do today, if Laura would like to go to the next slide. First of all, we're being recorded, so we've already started that going, so I hope you don't mind that. It would be useful if we can mute your mic and turn your camera off during the presentation, just so that we don't have any extra noises. You're welcome to put some questions in the chat throughout, and I will endeavour to answer them when Laura's talking, but we will have time for questions at the end, and I'm sure there will be quite a few questions on placements after this. So without further ado, what we're going to do, I'm going to give you a wee quick introduction to CERC, because you might not be aware of who CERC are, and then I'm going to hand over to Laura, who will tell you a lot more information about Nuffield Research Placements. And then we're going to actually hear an excerpt of an alumni, a student who took part in a placement at Strathclyde last year. We'll hear what her experience was and what she got out of it. And then we're delighted that Daniel and Angela will be joining us at 4:30, who previously provided a Nuffield placement in their establishments, to tell them you of their experiences. And I think that's probably the most valuable part of hearing it from people who have actually had placements before. And then Graham will have time at the end to tell us from a teacher perspective. He used to be a teacher in Stirling, where he had pupils doing Nuffield placements. So Laura, next slide please. So first of all, a wee intro to CERC. So CERC is the organisation that runs the Nuffield placement programme on behalf of STEM Learning. We're based in Dunfermline, and traditionally CERC provide professional learning to teachers. That's their mainstay of business. We've been doing it for 30 odd years, where STEM related teachers would go to CERC either online or face-to-face to learn more about their subjects, to learn advancements in their subjects, to hear about practical experiments that they can do in their classroom, etc. Our next click, Laura. The other part of CERC's business is as a health and safety advisory service, and that's where teachers, practitioners, early years community groups, etc. can tap into CERC's expertise in health and safety and access information on hazardous chemicals, radioactivity, all these kind of things, to make sure they're applying and complying with the law within their own establishment. Next bit, Laura. And the third thing, which is why we're here today, is actually a new thing within CERC, and it's our wider STEM engagement team. So this has really mushroomed in the last 18 months or so. You probably will have heard of the STEM Ambassador programme. We had 3 STEM Ambassador hubs in Scotland, and they all moved to become one STEM Ambassador hub under CERC's guidance in April last year. And Laura will touch on this later in our presentation, because if you're not already a STEM Ambassador, it would be to your advantage to become a STEM Ambassador if you decide to host a Nuffield placement. We also have something called the Acero Space Champion programme, which is to promote the space agency and the space sector within the UK. And we work on that in Scotland. There's obviously a burgeoning space industry in Scotland, and try and get STEM ambassadors to do a lot of space activities within schools. A flagship programme of CERC now is called the Young STEM Leader programme, and it's almost like a mini STEM ambassador programme that's funded by the Scottish Government, and that's where a pupil in a school can become a young STEM leader and lead peer-led activities, do STEM inspiration work within their classrooms and within lower sections of their school. And then finally, we have something called the Education Industry Partnerships. It's where we have organisations work with CERC to deliver elements of professional learning to teachers, to have their STEM ambassadors working with schools in particular challenges, etc. So that's really wrapped up nicely within the banner of called wider STEM engagement activities. So hopefully that gives you a flavour of who CERC are and where we're positioned within what we're talking about today. Laura, the next slide. And what we're going to do is just show you a very quick video just to put in context what Nuffield Research Placements are, so that we know where we're starting this afternoon.
Nuffield students always bring excitement to the workplace.
So when we get students, it's like a fight. People want to take them on.
It's 4 weeks of someone's time working on a problem that would never get to the top of your to-do list.
They're like a new pair of eyes. They question everything. For us, something like this is quite a small thing to do, but it has a massive impact on people's lives.
And it's really important to allow those people to have that opportunity that maybe they wouldn't normally have. You know, finance and money should never step in the way of a dream and of ambition.
To be seen in the community, to be adding that value and leaving a lasting legacy, I would really encourage anyone to do outreach with young people.
And it's definitely one of those factors that keeps you motivated when you feel that you are giving something back.
Okay, next slide, Laura. Oh, so that really is a very short video. It's only a minute long, but it's to show you in a nutshell what STEM Nuffield Research Placement is. It's a research project. It's not work experience. It's working with students in the upper half of the secondary school all over Scotland and in fact all over the UK. And although the video mentioned 4 weeks, we're actually looking at a 2 to 3 week face-to-face placement. So putting that in a nutshell, I'm now going to hand over to Laura, who will go into the placement programme in more detail.
Yeah, thanks, Aileen. So yeah, I'm Laura and I'm the STEM Programmes Coordinator at CERC, and I'm going to be the person that's coordinating all things Nuffield. So if you're emailing us, it's probably me at the other end of the emails. So it's lovely to meet you all on the call today. So yeah, now Aileen has introduced CERC, I'm just going to go into a wee bit more detail on what the programme will involve and what hosting a student this year would be like. So let's start off with exactly what are Nuffield Research Placements. Well, they're an opportunity for S5 students to take part in real-world research projects that contribute to the work of their host organisation. So they give STEM employers an opportunity to inspire the next generation of researchers, allowing them to build STEM and other transferable professional skills. So it's a 2 to 3 week placement that you'll supervise an S5 student through as they complete their independent research project. And I'm going to take you through all the stages today and processes that would involve and the supervision that you would provide. Students will work closely with yourselves to complete their project and get hands-on experience of what goes into real research. They'll be working from your project brief to plan their project, collect their data, analyse their data and report on their findings. The project will be an authentic piece of research that will contribute to the work of your organisation, and it will give them an insight into what a career in STEM is like, what it's like on a day-to-day basis and what aspects of working in STEM the student enjoys. So by contributing to a real live research project, they're going to gain loads of practical skills in STEM as they experience working alongside your teams of experienced researchers. So students from anywhere in Scotland can apply and will match their location and subject of interest to the available placements in their area. So each student shouldn't have to travel too far to their placement, and it should be that you'll be matched with a student that's really interested in your area of work. Placements can be hosted at a variety of work settings, and they've previously been in offices, museums, research centres, labs or fieldwork settings. And each year we have a whole host of different types of placement providers involved. Generally, many of those come from universities and research institutes, but there's also previously placed students with supervisors in local government and public sector agencies. Tech and pharmaceutical companies have hosted people before, and also think tanks and market research agencies. So here's just a selection of some of the providers that we had involved last year. Many of the Scottish universities were involved, research institutes such as Morden, Roslin and the James Hutton Institute, and industry partners such as Balfour Beatty and Rolls-Royce. So it's a really great array of organisations to be associated with. CERC take a broad view of STEM, so if you're worried your organisation might not fit with the traditional definition of STEM, it's likely that we can find a fit within this programme. And alongside the traditionally associated STEM subjects, we're looking for placements in areas such as earth science, data science, computer science and quantitative social science. CERC really appreciate the contribution of providers in taking on students, and we will publicly acknowledge your support throughout the programme. So the programme is split up into more sections than it used to be. Students now start out by completing some online modules that prepare them for their projects. So these were developed in partnership with the British Society of Computing, and they're designed to build the students' essential STEM skills, such as professional, research, data and digital skills, and that's going to make them feel more prepared to tackle their research project. And then they will come to yourselves for their 2 to 3 weeks to carry out their research project, developing their STEM skills further in this authentic environment. And then they're going to write up their findings in a report and produce a poster. And then the third section is a programme of optional supplementary workshops and webinars. And these are geared towards careers guidance and advice and training on key topics, such as things like Python programming language. So of course, this key stage where the majority of your input from a placement provider is required is undertaking the research or development collaboration itself over the 2 to 3 weeks on site. Placement providers will mentor and guide young people through a structured experience, and this structure can be adapted to suit your specific research question, but will flow roughly as follows. So here we go. This is the way that it would be staged, and students will start out with an initial phase which is prepared by their individual providers, and this is likely going to include tasks such as reviewing relevant scientific literature and associated materials, and potentially carrying out some preliminary data analysis or pilot studies, that sort of thing. Students are then going to carry out the main body of their research project under your guidance and supervision, where they will collect and analyse data to answer the research question that you set them. And then they will use these findings to produce a scientific poster, and there are templates and guidance on completing these, which I will take you through in a minute. As you and the supervisor will hold the specific technical subject knowledge, we encourage constructive feedback on both the poster and the scientific report. But we'll support any decisions from yourselves as to how this is delivered, what it will look like, and submission of the pieces of work. They trigger payment of a £200 bursary for the majority of students that are eligible for this. So some other advice for the project phase would include that we recommend maybe taking on more than one student at a time where possible, and if they take on the same or similar projects, then they can act as peer support for each other. They can discuss concepts and tasks together and their findings, and that should hopefully help reinforce their own learning as well. And again, only where possible, but we'd also encourage host organisations to allow students to work with as big a range of staff as possible, and this will help expose students to a variety of different role models and gain experience of different positions with your organisation. And so just to give you an idea of the sorts of things that have been done before, here are just some previous examples of projects that students have completed. So some students, as I say, are always placed in industry, and this first research question uses areas of chemistry and engineering to investigate aluminium in the automotive and aerospace industry. And there's also questions on topics such as infectious disease, immunology and treatment of disease that have been posed previously by the Roslin and Morden Institutes. University of Stirling previously hosted someone to research landscape evolution. And each year we aim to offer social science placements as well. So we've had students researching what primary children know about the human body. And we'll also have a video later, as Aileen said, from a Nuffield alumnus whose project last year was what characterises COVID-19 misinformation on Twitter, which she studied with the University of Strathclyde. So now you know roughly what the placement should involve. You might want to start coming up with your research question for students. So questions should be tight enough in scope that students can summarise the aim and objectives of the project within the wider context of the research. They should be able to identify different approaches of how they would go about answering that question, and with your guidance, select the most appropriate approach. And they should be able to justify the choice with some evidence as well. And then within that approach, they should be able to select and use the research skills needed to gather and analyse their data to answer the research question. And they should be able to make good use of materials and sources available whilst they're going about doing that. And it would also be great whilst they're doing this for them to meet other people within your organisation, as I said before, so they're exposed to lots of different people and career options within STEM. So the students are expected to spend about 45 to 60 hours on all of the placement work over the 2-week period that they'll be with you. So their research question needs to be answerable within about that time frame. The time input from supervisors during that 2 weeks is going to vary depending on the project and your availability and how many different tasks you set them and how much feedback you engage them with. So here we go, we've got some examples and templates for every different stage of the programme, and this is an example framework which outlines all the tasks that will need to be done and when they'll need to be completed by. And this should help you structure your own delivery of your placement for your student, and you'll be able to access all these things before you get going. So here we go, this just breaks things down into different days and weeks and what needs to be done at each point. And you might have seen on that example framework there that providers have to complete a risk assessment, and there are templates for that, as you can see here, and you can get in touch with us at any stage if you have any questions whilst you're completing things like the risk assessment forms. So as I mentioned before, there are templates for all the reporting that the students are expected to do. So here's a template for the poster. So as you can see, students will report on each stage of the project process, from what their aims were, to that they drew from your research question, all the way through to reporting what they found and the conclusions that they've drawn from that. So here we go, this is an example. This is last year's Sarah that I've mentioned before with her what characterises COVID-19 misinformation on Twitter. And she ran some data analysis and she created some models, as you can see there. Another example here where a student took part in some fieldwork looking at urban green spaces in Belfast. And this student studied the expansion of the universe using a digital virtual laboratory, and you can see roughly the level from these that students are working to within the programme, and that there's a really wide variety of projects that can fit within the programme as well. And then just to show you the other bit of reporting, this is an example of the report that the student has produced from their project. And there's also templates for these that you'll be provided with and guidance on what's expected from students within this report as well. So posters may also be useful for our celebration event. So once the placements are all finished, we hope to be able to get everyone together to celebrate all the amazing achievements that are going to have been made and get to meet everyone and share what the students did and what they found in their projects. At the moment, we're anticipating this event will be in September, but we're going to keep you updated closer to the time when hopefully we're able to get that organised. So the programme aims to be absolutely as accessible as possible, and there's no cost to students, their school or yourselves as organisations to be involved in the programme. And to ensure that participating doesn't come at any cost to student or their families, all participants can claim travel expenses, and most can also claim a bursary of £200 if they're eligible. And I'll come on to eligibility just in this next section here. So that does take me nicely on to who is eligible to apply for the programme. The students that we focus on are high attaining, motivated SBI students that are on a post-16 education pathway to develop their STEM skills, and they're from families where they're the first to pursue higher education, or they're from socially and economically disadvantaged backgrounds. So there's 5 main criteria that students have to meet to be eligible to apply for the programme. So they've got to be over 16 and in 5th year at school. They've got to be in full-time state-funded education in the UK. They also have to have already passed a minimum of 5 national 5s, a B grade or above, and these must include maths, a science subject, and English or another humanities subject. And they have to be studying at least one of science, technology, engineering, economics, geography, psychology, computer statistics or maths at a higher level in their 5th year at school. And they've obviously got to be available for a few weeks over the summer to complete the placement with yourselves, but there is some wiggle room on this for when it can be carried out and whether the weeks are consecutive or not. And then students also have to meet one of these criteria as well. So they can either be care experience, so having lived in local authority care, come from a family with a combined income of £30,000 or less, have been entitled to free school meals at some point over the last 6 years, be entitled to discretionary payments at their school or college, or to be their first in their immediate family to participate in higher education. So that means that their parents haven't already been to university and got a degree. Okie dokie, so these are the locations of the applications that we've received so far. So we've already got 70 students roughly interested in the programme, but this is very much just our first recruitment drive, and we're going to go on to focus on some of the areas with less applications, such as Aberdeenshire. And then just to zoom in on that Central Belt area there, we've got lots coming in from the West Coast at the moment, but as I say, this will probably likely balance out a bit because we'll focus some of our further recruitment drive on the East Coast. The date for students have the applications in isn't until the 30th of March, so they've still got a while to get some more in. And CERC will be coordinating which student goes to which placement. You might want to be involved in selecting students. For example, we might narrow it down to a couple of different applications that match your placement, and then you can choose from those. Or you can leave the decision entirely up to us and just focus your energy on the project itself. So once you've expressed interest in hosting a student, we'll get in touch again and we can agree on things like how much you want to be involved in the student selection process. We can work out your availability over the summer, your capacity at different times and all that sort of thing. Okay, so why participate in the programme? Well, first of all, I'm going to give you start off with some of the benefits to students. So no matter what area of work they end up going into, this experience provides them with loads of transferable skills that they can apply in future studies and careers. Over the placement, they'll build up loads of amazing research skills, including how to plan and design research, make it precise and reliable, how to gather data, how to analyse that data, and how to communicate their findings when they produce their report and poster. The programme also allows them to expand their professional networks, as they'll not only meet all the people at your organisation, they will join our Nuffield alumni network, and they'll hopefully get to meet lots of other people that have taken part in the programme this year, students and providers at our celebration event. So Nuffield Research Placements, they're also great for when it comes to applying for university. They're excellent to put in UCAS personal statements, and they demonstrate the students' dedication to learning more about their subject and gaining STEM skills that they will be able to put into good use at university. And as I say, whilst they're completing their projects, they will learn loads more about their subject, going into more depth than at school and becoming more specialised in a specific area. And with all the skills and knowledge that they'll gain along the way, there's absolutely no doubt that a Nuffield Research Placement is going to enhance their future career prospects. And what is really valuable is that the placements give an insight into what future higher education and career pathways might look like for that young person. And this really allows them to imagine themselves in those positions, and it gives them things that they can aim for as they progress into their studies and their future careers. So here are some of the highlights from students themselves. These are just some of the most common themes that I picked out from the feedback from last year. So young people enjoyed being able to work at a greater depth on a subject that they're passionate about. They enjoyed working with a professional in that subject area. So placement providers at the forefront of their subject, so students get to work with really excellent scientists on really cutting edge science. They enjoyed getting an insight into what their day-to-day job might look like if they were working in STEM, and what a STEM career might be to them. And students gain loads of transferable skills that they can use towards a STEM career, and they'll benefit them in any path that they choose. And then here are some specific actual quotes that I pulled out. So these are from a student that did an earth science placement at the University of Glasgow, and they said, "Working in the lab, meeting many interesting people and broadening my horizons, I realised there was so much more to the world and maybe a space for me in the scientific community." So after the placement, they successfully applied to university to do their undergraduate degree in that same earth science department. And they went on to say, "I do not know if I would have had the courage to go to university without this placement, and I know I would not have had the exposure to have even thought to study earth science." They've now completed their degree and they're working in earth sciences. They attribute following that path directly to completing their Nuffield research placement. So it was a really, really great experience for them. And then these are just some highlights that have been reported by teachers of students that have done placements. So they report students improve their work in STEM following doing one of these placements, and that they've often got increased motivation to pursue higher education and STEM pathways and apply for STEM subjects at university. And they saw the benefit of the programme in providing opportunities and experiences for students that they just wouldn't be able to get at school. And you don't just need to take it from me what students get out of these experiences. One of the students that I mentioned from last year's cohort, Syra, she's made us a wee video of what she did in her project last year and what she got out of the experience. So I'll just do that for you now.
Hi, my name is Syra and I completed a Nuffield research placement last year with the University of Strathclyde. As you can tell from the poster, it was called What Characterises COVID-19 Misinformation on Twitter. I created a machine learning model that would classify tweets into tweets containing true contents and tweets containing false contents. Immediately you can tell that my project relates very well to current issues, as COVID-19 misinformation is still very prevalent, so this project really helped me to educate myself on the pandemic. Before my placement, I had very little experience in coding and programming, so my supervisors put me through a Python training program, which really helped me to understand and learn the basics of Python. Most of the work was independent. It wasn't like school. I wasn't told what I could and couldn't do. I had the freedom to explore, and I really enjoyed having that freedom because it's not something I normally get. I was given a data set and I was told I could explore it any way I wanted to. So after I'd made a discovery, I'd email my supervisors showing them what I'd done, and they'd email me back with tips on what I could improve on and where I maybe could add a bit more. My supervisors were really friendly and helpful. We had regular meetings to discuss my findings. Whenever I needed help, I was able to email them and they would send me links to websites and videos that were relevant to what I was doing. Just now I'm in 6th year and I'm in the process of writing a dissertation for Advanced Higher English, and although computing and English don't directly relate, the placement I completed has helped me with essential things such as deconstructing chunks of information, how to identify reliable sources, and how to properly reference those sources. Another thing it's really helped me with is my time management. One of the methods I learned during my placement was timetabling, and I have to say it's really helped me to stop procrastinating. There was also lots of opportunities for me after the placement. I went forward for a Gold Crest Award, and I managed to win the SIGSA Education Poster Prize. It also looked really good on my university personal statement, and I dedicated a whole paragraph to it, and so far I've got 2 unconditional offers. The Nuffield research placement has been an invaluable experience to me, and I would highly recommend it to everyone. Hi.
Okay, so taking part in the programme obviously doesn't just have all these amazing benefits for students, there's also lots of benefits for placement providers as well. So placements are going to bring talent to the heart of your organisation, and you're going to help inspire the next generation of researchers and developers. You'll get to work with top students who could very well make significant contributions to projects that you have running at the moment. Participating in the programme will allow you to develop your mentoring and supervisory skills as well. And it can also fulfil public engagement, widening participation and corporate social responsibility goals, whilst enhancing institutional reputation. CERT will publicly acknowledge your contribution to the programme going forwards as well. There's no financial commitment from your side of things to support the student with expenses such as travel, as this is all provided for the students too. Other benefits that you could use is that you could use your time hosting the students to submit as a STEM ambassador hours. So if you're not already a STEM ambassador, here's just a wee bit about them. It's a UK-wide programme that's delivered by STEM Learning. They're based in York, and there are over 30,000 STEM ambassadors in the UK across 17 STEM ambassador hubs. They're relatable role models who work with young people to inspire them to get involved with STEM. And by signing up to be a STEM ambassador, you also get a free PVG check, so it can be a good way to fulfil safeguarding obligations of your organisation as well. And there are a number of opportunities for students as well, alongside completing a Nuffield research placement, which include Young STEM Leader Awards, Gold Crest Awards, and they could get involved in the Big Bang Fair too. And Aileen mentioned a little bit about Young STEM Leader before, but for those of you not familiar with the programme, it's an award that's open to young people all across Scotland to inspire, lead and mentor their peers through the creation and delivery of STEM activities, interactions or events within their schools or their communities or the youth groups. And the programme is currently available at 6 different levels, and that's split into 2 versions, so there's a formal and a non-formal version of that. So students may wish to complete their Nuffield research project, which they could use to gain this Young STEM Leader Award. It's SEQF recognised, so it can be included in university applications as well, which is really great. So now I just want to take you through a wee bit of a timeline of what's going to happen if you get involved in the programme, and just highlight a few important dates of when different elements occur throughout the next few months. So we've got our current information session, so we've already ticked off the first date in the calendar. And then the application deadline for students is the 30th of March. So that's when we're going to have all our applications in from young people. This is not a hard and fast deadline for placement providers, but it would really be great to have projects proposed already at this stage, because at that point we're going to move forward to matching students with projects. So that would help us to know what we've got and what we still need to get. And then from May to June time, students are going to begin the online elements of the programme that I mentioned before. And then the next part of the programme is the research placement itself. So this is a graphic that I took from STEM Learning, who mainly operate in England, and so they've got it down as just July and August, but we might be able to do some of them in June at the end of term in Scotland as well. So the timings of the project will of course depend on your own availability and capacity to take on students at different times of the year. And then when students finish their project, and once all the reporting, including the poster and report, are done, they upload them to our system, and that's going to trigger their bursary payment. And then in September, as I say, we're hoping to plan on holding our celebration event, and that's going to allow students and providers to all come together and celebrate all the work that they've done. So here's just another wee video of some students talking about their experiences in their placements, how they feel about STEM now going forward and towards their university careers and beyond. So I'll just try and play that.
It's a really good experience, and you get a feel of what university research is like.
It gave me an idea of university life.
It's not something we've ever done before.
It's made me think about my options.
And like getting an insight into what it's like to be a scientist.
Now I know what it's like, because when I was there I felt like an undergraduate student. I was treated like an undergraduate student, and that's what really matters. I know what it's like now.
I was really happy because I really wanted to know what it was like to be a scientist, and I couldn't believe it because there's not a lot of people that get placements, and the fact that I did, it was really good. I got to talk to lots of scientists and ask them about the job and how they find it, so that was really interesting, and they told me a lot about how they got to be where they were and the different pathways that I could go down, and it was just good to see what they do on a daily basis as well.
In school you feel like just a student who's studying physics or biology, but there you're researching it and you're breaking new ground. That's really exciting to me.
My name is Professor Daniel Nago. I'm the head of computer science at the University of Bradford. The students are considered generally a valuable resource in terms of being taught and being expected to learn, but I think actually they are more than this, because working in an academic environment for projects, they are able to see the outcome of their work. So they are not just a valuable resource in terms of the impact of the teams, but they're a valuable resource because they provide feedback in the projects as well, and they are users as well as designers of what will be a deliverable of the future.
The content of the projects, it was really interesting. It's quite exciting to be looking at such a prevalent disease.
My project is based on using Twitter and other social medias to find drug dealers and other illegal drugs and fake drugs online. I know now that I could do computer science because I did enjoy the project very much, and it's helped me in such that I have experience with coding now that I never did before. If I go to university to do computer science, I'm no longer completely in the dark about it, which means I have an advantage over other university students, which makes me competitive in like the applying to universities and stuff.
The biggest challenge in terms of hosting the students for us as the Computing Society were probably just it being something new, really. It was a fantastic experience, but we don't tend to work with students outside university, so just getting used to working with people from younger age groups was good fun, but a challenge at first.
The Nuffield Foundation is great.
I'm really glad I was given the opportunity. I think anyone who wants to get into science in particular should definitely try a placement, because
for the students I think it's a fantastic chance to get some real world experience.
It gave me an idea of university life.
Just getting a bit of independence. And
how many people can say at my age that they've written a 5,000 word report on aviation?
The students were great. They worked really well. They were fantastic communicators, especially for their age, so it was great for us just to see people interested in the topics and subjects that we promote and we love doing ourselves.
Really proud of what I've done.
Okie dokie. Right, hopefully not play that twice. We're now going to hear from the first of our speakers today, who have each hosted students on Nuffield placements in the past. Firstly, we're going to hear from Daniel Barreto, who's based at the School of Engineering and the Built Environment at Edinburgh Napier University. So I'll stop sharing my screen, if I can do that. Excellent. Can you just see one of yourself now, hopefully?
Yeah. So, yeah, hello everyone. I hope that you can all listen properly to what I'm saying. If not, please do complain so I can check what I can do. But yeah, I've been asked to tell you a little bit of my experience on with the placement students. I've been involved with maybe 7 or 8 students over the last few years. The summary of each of those 7 or 8 experiences is that it has been great. We have no complaints, and as far as we are aware, the students have also had a good experience. I am a researcher in geotechnical engineering. I deal with soils, so I do things like lab experiments of the resistance or the formability of different soil types. I do modeling of avalanches, landslides, seismic resistance of buildings and foundations, and how they behave during earthquakes and that type of thing. And I mentioned that simply because it's one of those areas in which you very rarely will find that the students that you get matched to your projects were actually looking to do that. It's not an area of research that is really popular amongst high school students. In fact, very few of them have heard the word geotechnical engineering before, even though they have heard of civil engineering. But that has not been an impediment for them and for us to benefit from the placement. They have been involved in performing lab experiments with different soils and their analysis. They have been involved in parametric studies or sensitivity analysis of simulations of earthquake problems and looking what is the effect of different parameters in the simulation. They have been involved in analysis of results of simulations of various projects that take long to simulate, so they just get given the data and they help us to analyze it and interpret it. They have been involved in standalone projects that have quite a definite outcome and a definite plan. I think that has been quite important because all of these students are highly committed and generally highly efficient. Whatever you tell them to do, they tend to do it quite quickly. And in fact, in the first or two placements, we had a few moments of panic of getting out of activities for them to do and having to reevaluate what else they could do because they were very engaged with the project. Whatever the matching that they initially had, we have found that their key objective always is they want to learn about how research is done and get new skills, whatever they are. We have always been open to for them to tell us, look, I'm bored, please tell me to do something else. And that has not happened. They have been, or we have been fortunate not to be the case, or they have been too polite not to do it. Whatever it is, we believe they have enjoyed it and they have learned from it. We have benefit from it as well. Some of those experiments that they have or simulations that they have helped to analyze, they have been eventually published, and no-field research has appeared in many acknowledgements of our publications already because of that. They all, as I said, are very engaged, and they engage even more if you have a PhD student involved as part of the process, because they relate much better with them than with you. You are always, particularly at the start during the first week, if you are always the authority figure that they feel sometimes a bit scared to relate to, but with the PhD students that does not happen. So having someone younger that they can relate helps a lot. As advice on, which is what one of the questions that I have here in the list of what would you do or suggest to new providers, I will say definitely the best thing is to have a plan, because you'll realize how efficient and engaged they can be. So you always have to have a plan of what to do next with them. Have a plan B, because the plan A will be finished sooner than expected, and they will be always waiting for you to tell them what they can do next. In fact, as soon as the projects get matched by no-field, you will always get very quickly the email from them to set the date, and in that email they will also ask you immediately, what can you give me to read, because I want to prepare before you start. So it does require some form of advanced planning, not just in terms of what you're going to give them to read, but also making sure that when they come later on, what you have given them to read is actually useful. We have done a few smaller mistakes in that sense in the particularly start, but we have learned from that. Yeah, it becomes a very rewarding process. In our experience, many of the students keep in touch with us even after they have finished the placement. Many of them ask you for recommendation letters for their applications to university, other placements, or whatever, and they do in general keep in touch and telling you what they are doing, and they remind you of they learned and appreciated the time during the placement. So I think that, yeah, to summarize, is definitely a good experience for everyone involved, and every time I have the opportunity to get involved, I will not hesitate. We have been involved pre-COVID and during COVID, and whether that experience has been face-to-face in the lab or more of a virtual mode during the pandemic, it has always been beneficial for everyone. So yeah, nothing really negative to say from any side. And I think that summarizes my experience. I don't know if anyone has questions or comments.
Fantastic.
Pass you over to Laura. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Daniel, for sharing your insights. I think we'll pass over to Angela, who's going to tell us a bit more, and then do some Q&A afterwards with both of you, if that's okay.
Yeah,
fantastic.
That's fine.
Yeah, pass over to Angela now, who's hosted students before at Balfour Beatty, and then we'll have some questions afterwards.
Great, thanks very much, Laura. Yep, so similar to Daniel, I hosted students in Balfour Beatty. So I had 4 students, and last year was my first year hosting students. The project that they were down to help me with was a carbon footprinting project, so looking very much at the environment and sustainability side of things. So as I said, I'd opened the position initially. I'd said we had 2 positions. During the process, Nuffield came back to me and asked, is there any capacity to take extra? So they gave me a list of 4 options to pick 2 from. And so I offered the opportunity out to all 4 students because it was going to be an online opportunity, and I was able to do that. My first challenge was that unfortunately the student expectations didn't match up to the project. So it was very clear that the students that I were working for were expecting to work in a lab. So they were all very interested in being physicists at the end of the day. They had a very strong background in physics. And it was very obvious the first time that I met them that quite a few were disappointed that they weren't going to be working in a laboratory environment. So as a result, one dropped out straight away. They just didn't want to be involved in the project any further. And during the project, another one dropped out because they got a better offer. So they got the opportunity to work in a lab that was more aligned to what they wanted to ultimately do or find out a bit more about. And then a further one dropped out just at the reporting process. They took part in all the activities, they came for the site visit, but then unfortunately they didn't do the report at the end. So I was left with 1 student that made it through to the end. So I was a bit worried that the opportunity I'd offered we weren't supporting them enough with, or it just wasn't of interest. I think when talking to them and talking to the student that stayed, it was very different from their expectations. So my main recommendation, if you're new to the process, is just to have a look at the website and look at what's been advertised and the information that the students are actually seeing in terms of what's been offered. So STEM obviously is a very big subject, but just make sure that the projects you're going to offer aligns well with the requirements or what's been offered through the placements there. So I think the main benefit that my student that completed got out of it, she certainly found it interesting. She was very open and said, obviously, she also wanted to be a physicist and didn't expect to be into a construction company, but she was very interested in climate change and wanted to know a bit more about carbon footprinting. I'd put on the offer that it was going to be very heavily maths based, and the individual was interested in that, and they enjoyed finding out more about using Excel and some of the formulas and tools that we showed them that they needed to use to do the carbon footprint calculations. The student that completed also, I gave them the opportunity to present to the wider environment within the business and to customers. And although the student was really nervous about that, she said she'd never had to do that before, and it was one of the most useful skills she felt she learnt. So we did a dry run through just with myself, and then she was really brilliant at presenting to the customer and to the wider team. And in terms of benefits from Balfour Beatty, I think it's always important to me to engage individuals on projects like this. I'm really keen in getting individuals out to see the world of industry as much as possible and understand all the opportunities that are out there. So obviously the environmental fields of construction is not something that's particularly well known about. So always keen to talk about it and get as many people interested as possible just to find out a bit more about it. And we certainly got that through with Hannah, who completed her placement with us. I think also sometimes there's a bit of a resistance. I've done lots of different student placements, and you do have to plan for them up front. You have to have activities and keep that individually engaged. But students are such a great asset as well in terms of just helping with some of the workloads. So the projects I'd set up were with customers that were interested in carbon footprinting, but we didn't have a contractual requirement to deliver that, and we didn't have enough resource to deliver some of the opportunities that were there. So by using the students, we were able to offer something in addition to the projects, and I think that's really important that people recognise that benefit as well. It's not just a benefit to the student, but they can do and are capable of doing great tasks that maybe is always on your to-do list and you never quite get round to doing. So they're a valuable asset, as well as having the upfront time in planning. In terms of recommendations, so obviously making sure that you are matched well to the students and that your project looks at some of the previous projects and what the students are expecting is important. To pay attention to the timeline, so I saw the slide was presented there just about how the sessions work and the expected timelines for completing different aspects of the project, and then the reporting at the end. It's important just to make sure that that's factored into your project plan and to make sure that all those are delivered, and certainly developing that project plan right at the early stage to submit with your first offering is really keen. Is a really good idea to do, because that makes sure that you've had a good think through about it and will increase the chances of the students being matched to what you're going to offer and what you're going to deliver as well. But that was the key things I was hoping just to share with you, but similar to Daniel, happy to take questions if anyone's got specific questions about experiences or process that we went through. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Angela, for sharing your experiences as well, and definitely some good learning points that hopefully we can take on board when we're matching students this year. So yeah, we've got a little bit of time for questions now. If anyone had anything they wanted to ask either to Angela or Daniel, you can either pop it in the chat or just stick your camera on. Did anyone have any questions?
I just had a quick question to Angela. To the pupil that went through the whole experience, did it change their mindset as to what they wanted to do when they left school?
Yeah.
Did it influence them?
Yeah, so I've colleagues, so other colleagues in Balfour Beatty ran placements and had that experience. They had people that actually they were just so interested in the opportunity that they were given that that's actually a degree they went on to, and we further continued to sponsor them as apprentices. Hannah wasn't that interested, she wasn't keen, she was still very much in physics, but she was really interested just to that bigger picture about how industry actually works, and it made her consider, she was always very focused on applied physics, and that's what she just kept saying to me, that's what I want to do. And I said, but in terms of your long-term career, what does that look like? And she hadn't actually thought about a day-to-day job and what would be involved in that day-to-day side of things. So I think it certainly opened her eyes to the way the world works, for want of better words, and things that to look at in terms of when she's thinking about future careers and courses, is in terms of what that will eventually look like for her in her day-to-day life.
Excellent, thank you very much. Any other questions from the audience? I see Vary's actually put in the chat, can the placement be virtual? So I think last year they all had to be online because of COVID, but this year Nuffield are really keen that they are going back to the face-to-face because that is invaluable for the student. I see Daniel nodding there, you probably agree that a face-to-face experience is better than an online experience, but we will consider it if that's the case. Daniel, if you want to have a comment there.
Yeah, I will add, I did, my last two placements were virtual, not just last year, but the previous one as well. And it's not to say that it was a bad experience, but in person is definitely better. The students engage much more.
Yeah, so, definitely.
So if you have an option, definitely face-to-face is the way to go.
Yeah, fantastic. We're definitely hoping that that's going to be the case as we get to the summer. Donna, there, did you have a question? You put your hand up?
Yeah, so this is more, I guess, about the scheme. So how early do schools know about the Nuffield scheme? Because I was looking at the subjects that students are supposed to have taken to qualify for this, and I know that in a lot of schools, students are allowed to drop English and or maths quite early on. So how does that factor? Because I'm just thinking about the school I know about, and a lot of kids are dropping maths, for instance, and so that would mean that they couldn't do this.
I don't know if I was just going to butt in there, Laura. I mean, we've already started the process, so obviously children are applying just now, but the teachers have got to put in what their predicted grades are, and the teachers have to put a reference for each child. So I guess if the teacher thinks the student is not going to follow through with the maths, they would maybe include that in the reference. I mean, what we're looking for are highly motivated children who really, really want to do this and have a passion for doing it, rather than somebody that's being forced to do it because somebody thinks it's a good idea for them.
So I guess I am a STEM ambassador, and I'm just wondering if we should be engaging with schools that we know are likely to have children that would qualify for this early. So I mean, even before they're choosing their Nat 5s, to make sure that they have those subjects if they're thinking about going on.
Yes, I mean, that would be great to do it that early. I mean, obviously we're looking for them after the hires, they've sat their hires, but as a STEM ambassador, if you're in working with schools and you're promoting this as an incentive for children S2, S3, saying, well, there's this fantastic opportunity when you get to S5, then by all means, definitely. Yeah, okay. Fantastic idea.
That's just what I was thinking. I'm just trying to think through, obviously some might have not chosen what they need, but then want to do science, so they have to go through other options. Yeah. Okay,
that's thank you. Thank you. I see Graham come on the call. Were you going to say the similar thing, Graham?
No, not at all. But yeah, I mean, I would definitely echo what you said, is that it's young people who are doing suitable qualifications, and there is a chicken and egg thing where the placement will start before the rescue exam results come in. So we will rely pretty heavily on their predicted grades from teachers. But yeah, if someone's dropped their STEM subjects at the earliest opportunity, they're probably not suitable for an NRP.
Did anyone have any other questions before we wrap up for the session? We've got one there from Amir. Is there any deadline for hosts to submit their projects? So the deadline for kids is going to be the 30th of March. So that would ideally be when we had projects submitted from placement providers as well. But we don't start giving out the projects to the students for a while after that. So there is a wee bit of wiggle room, but ideally, if possible, the end of March would be brilliant.
Yeah, and it gives us an idea of the type of placements available, because if all the students want to do forensic science, for example, which is, you know, the thing that everybody wants to do, then if we know the breadth of the placements we've got, we can then go to schools and say, well, actually, look at this fantastic project we've got involved in mechanical engineering, and, you know, talk to the physics students maybe rather than the biology students. So if we can get a flavour of the type of placements, it helps us look at the demographic of the students that are applying and make sure we've got a match, and otherwise we'll go out and do recruitment within the schools for those particular areas. And I think Angela's comments are fantastic in terms of making sure that the student knows exactly what they're signing up for, and that the parameters, you know, like this is where you're going to be working. You know, and an industrial experience is just as valuable, obviously, as a university experience. And that's part of our job will be, is setting those expectations and helping the students understand that. Fiona, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, it's a slightly random one, and it's to you guys at CERC, I think. I've been a previous placement provider, and one of the students that joined us had, well, you know, you've got high achieving kids from sometimes not the best background, and one of the students had what seemed to be sort of mental health issues going on. There was something going on, and I know the previous coordinator had quite a lot of interaction with her to try and kind of make sure the support network was there. It was a slightly longer than the 2 weeks. But if there's anything like that, you know, these are young, slightly more vulnerable people. Do you guys have the support network for us supervisors that we can make contact and, you know, make contact with the schools and make sure everything's all right at home and so on like that?
Yes, that would be our role. We're following on from what the previous provider did, that we will provide the same level of service. I mean, already in some of the applications coming in, I can see some pupils have, you know, put things on their applications that means we'll have to have a certain nurturing service around them and make sure that they're not abandoned and they're not just sent on the placement without taking that into context. So we will be aware of these things and make sure we put a service in place. Definitely.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Good to hear.
Thanks for raising that.
Only ever be an email or a phone call away if anything ever comes up. So we'll definitely be around when you've got your placement kids in.
Cool.
Fantastic. Did anyone have any last questions before we wrap up the session there? No, it doesn't look like it. So what I will just do at the very end is I'm going to share my screen again so that I can show you a QR code. So this QR code here, or hopefully if I can make it bigger, this QR code here is going to take you to a Microsoft form where you can submit a note of interest to host a student this year. I will send a link to the form out in a follow-up email as well, so don't worry about it if you don't catch it just now. There's just a few questions there about your name, role, organisation and the kind of subject area that you'd be offering a placement. We will then get in touch with you from there and start organising things like how many students you'd like to take, when, what sort of project you're going to offer, that sort of thing. So yeah, just give that a wee scan, or I will send out the link in an email, and we hope to hear from you soon. I'll stop sharing there, and thank you all so much for coming along to the session today. Thank you so much to Daniel and Angela for your sharing your experiences. And if anyone thinks of any other questions, just get me on the email. It's the same one that I sent out your Teams link on this morning, and I will send out the link to the form as well. So yeah, thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you. Thanks to Daniel and Angela. Your input's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Look forward to hearing from you.
Bye-bye.